NASA has done an incredible job answering some of the universe's biggest questions. Every year they discover countless planets, new galaxies, and even signals that have led our best researchers to question where they're coming from and what they mean. Space agencies are now gearing up to send humans deeper into space and hope that within the next few decades humans will be walking on Mars. It's not uncommon for scientists, though, to observe things in space that never get answered. Countless objects pass by our planet every year, and NASA and other space agencies have openly admitted that some of them remain a mystery, saying that although they're in the category of space debris, they can't give a specific answer for what the object is. This has led to space enthusiasts and amateur researchers to search through old archives, in the hopes that they find something of interest. NASA's satellite EIT-304 captured a strange-looking structure fly past the sun, with users who spotted it saying that it appeared to lead behind a long trail. Those who found the image said that when you zoom in you can see that this object is in the shape of a disc. Some of those who saw the image said this isn't the first time that they've seen something like this close to our sun, and wondered whether it could be something like a large asteroid that's making its way through our solar system. Others, however, said this probably isn't what's being seen, as NASA hasn't reported that an asteroid of this size is close to our sun. Others said that because of the shape, it could be a piece of space debris that flew past the satellite. Others who studied these photographs have said that space debris can often give off the illusion of it being bigger than it is, and that is behind many reports of mysterious flying crafts. Not everyone thinks these objects are easy to explain, though, and say that very strange-looking objects can be seen around our sun, noting that many of them are too big to fit in the category of space debris. NASA and other space agencies have brushed off these claims, and note that they've never seen anything that would suggest the advanced aircrafts are visiting us. Regardless, this hasn't stopped people from looking through old archives in the hopes of finding something of interest, and there's groups of people that are sure that these objects can't be explained away as space debris. The next suggestion was that it could be a camera anomaly. In fact, NASA workers have long said that these camera anomalies often take on the appearance of something much different, when in reality they're just spacefluffle camera glitches. NASA, though, has admitted that every so often they do detect objects close to our planet that remain a mystery, but they've said that just because this happens it doesn't mean that they're extraterrestrial in origin. As mentioned, space agencies are always making discoveries, and one of the most recent ones was made by TESS, and a large international team of astronomers led by Dr. Jennifer Berndt, who's an exoplanet researcher at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California. One of the most recent discoveries of recent months has been that surrounding the discovery of many new exoplanets by the Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite. For those that aren't aware, back in 2009, the Kepler satellite was launched with the purpose of discovering planets all across our galaxy, and helped to shed light on the discovery of a number of potentially habitable Earth-like planets located very close to our solar system. This mission proved to be such a success, and at the center of a number of incredible discoveries, that this led to the creation and launch of another satellite system, known as the Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite, that was designed with the purpose of discovering exoplanets moving across the surface of their parent star and revealing their size in the shadows. Despite this new state-of-the-art system having been launched back on the 18th of April in 2018, it's already made a number of exoplanet discoveries in recent months. These discoveries include dozens of confirmed planets, 300 additional planetary candidates, a number of gas giant planets, and many other Earth-like planets that have been missed by previous Kepler missions. Additionally, these new discoveries have allowed the new revelation that for a planet to form similar to the size of Jupiter, it must have an orbit that's been disturbed, allowing it to form to such a massive size, providing new insights as to exactly how such gas giants are formed in the universe. At the rate this new satellite is uncovering new planets, it will surely pass the Kepler satellite in a few years, as well as lead to a number of new incredible insights and discoveries in the academic field. NASA said the following on their website in regards to their most recent discovery. A planet some 90 light-years away from Earth is oddly reminiscent of our own Neptune, that is a gaseous world with a potentially rich atmosphere, which is ripe for study. The planet is more than 3.5 times as round as Earth and warmed by Earth's standards at 134 degrees Fahrenheit, or 57 Celsius. TOI 1231b orbits a red dwarf star, smaller but longer-lived than our own Sun, with a year once around the star that is 24 days long. But the planet stays relatively cool despite its close orbit, because its star is also on the cooler side. Though not habitable due to its size, the planets could offer scientists one of their first chances to capture a Barco-type reading of the atmosphere of a Neptune-sized exoplanet, a planet orbiting another star. This would allow comparisons with smaller worlds elsewhere in the galaxy, bringing potentially deep insights into the composition and formation of exoplanets and planetary systems, including our own. So what do you make of these recent space discoveries? The Moon is one of the most studied celestial objects outside of Earth. In 1969, American astronaut Neil Armstrong became the first person to walk on the Moon, marking a turning point in humanity in which space agencies promised to return. As mentioned by SpaceX, only 24 humans have been to the Moon in history, noting that no one has been back since 1972. SpaceX have announced that they plan to send their Starship spacecraft and Super Heavy rocket to the Moon, noting that Starship will have the ability to carry in excess of 100 metric tons to Earth's orbit. Interestingly, although the Moon has been studied extensively, there's still some questions that remain unanswered. For example, Noah Petro, a research scientist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, revealed that the fundamental question of how the Moon formed and how that relates to the Earth is really the most important of the unknowns. Some of the most interesting mysteries come in the form of strange photographs that have been taken of our Moon, with one interesting one being taken by a telescope user. It's reported that the photographs were taken with a Celestron TravelScope 70 portable telescope with a HD Pro C920 webcam. The person who observed the object said that it appeared to fly behind the Moon, and that they couldn't explain what it was. They shared the images and they were picked up by websites that study the unknown. Users who saw the photographs then put forward their suggestions in order to explain what the object could have belonged to. One user said the following: "I've seen a few people suggest that the object could be a smudge on the camera. But then you can see in the photos it moving across the Moon and even behind it, and I'm pretty sure that smudges don't fly behind the Moon." End quote. Some were quick to point out that it's very rare to capture objects moving behind the Moon, and note that the majority of strange objects seen above the Moon can be seen in front of it, causing some to say that the perspective is off and that the objects are actually closer than they look. Another amateur astronomer said they've seen strange objects fly close to our Moon, but noted that they can only be seen with the aid of a telescope. Others went down the route of suggesting that it could be a mysterious flying object, or perhaps a top-secret aircraft that was being tested by the military. For years now, amateur researchers have long speculated that mysterious crafts have been interested in our Moon, and point to various eyewitness testimonies of former NASA workers and astronauts who have detailed to see mysterious objects on the Moon and have gone on to tell stories of how the United States is in contact with these mysterious objects. Edgar Mitchell is one of these individuals who believed that we were in contact with advanced beings. He said the following: "White Sands was a testing ground for atomic weapons. And that's what the extraterrestrials were interested in. They wanted to know about our military capabilities. My own experience talking to people has made it clear that ETs have been attempting to keep us from going to war, and that they've helped to create peace on Earth." End quote. Although NASA has said that these quotes are baseless, and that there's no evidence that humans are in contact with extraterrestrials, it's these quotes that have caused some to question whether these strange objects actually belong to something unknown. Unfortunately, it's tough to come to a conclusive answer for what these objects are, and all we can do right now is speculate. Another mystery of our Moon is that of its craters. Our Moon features a gigantic crater. This hole has been on our Moon for billions of years, since an unknown object hit the dark side of the Moon. We have measured this crater to reach 1,550 miles in width and 8 miles in depth, and so have dubbed it one of the largest craters within our solar system. The presumed explanation for decades was simply that this crater was formed when contact was made between the Moon and a rapidly paced meteor. If this had been the case, then there would be pieces from inside the moon on the surface, possibly available to examine. Some new insight was provided in January 2019, when the Yutu rover was sent to the moon from China. It reached the bottom of this mysterious crater and was able to provide scientists with some more details. Minor traces of minerals were recorded by the Yutu, which appear to have come from within the moon's mantle. In a turn of events, new data came to light within August of 2019 from a study published within Geophysical Research Letters. After an analysis was conducted upon the materials found at the bottom of the crater, it revealed evidence suggesting that the crater was composed entirely of dust, with no mantle. The crust is the outer layer, with the mantle coming just underneath it, similar to Earth. This would imply that an object collided with the moon with enough force to open a colossal crater, but not enough force to release any of the mantle onto the surface of the moon. Co-author of the study, Hou Zhang, a planetary scientist working at the China University of Geosciences, explained how the team had anticipated finding the mantle materials at this landing site. He goes on to explain that the lack of mantle organisms rules out the possibility that a meteor traveling with high velocity had caused this crater, eliminating an assumption that we had been acting upon for decades. This study employed the use of spectroscopy in order to clarify and identify the minerals that had been found within the lunar soil. This process observes how each grain is reflected within both visible and near-infrared lines. This study was carried out using the equipment Yutu was already armed with, performing these reflection tests on 6 different areas of soil, ranging up to approximately 175 feet away from the landing site. An already established database allowed each mineral to be identified based upon size, reflectance, and degradation, which often occurs as a result of solar wind. Within every sample, it was evident that the primary mineral in the moon's surface is plagioclase. We know this is common in the crust of Earth and the moon, that it isn't likely to be found within the mantle. This mineral composition supports the meteor theory, but then the unanswered question remains as to what created this crater. If it were a meteor, then why aren't there chunks of mantle all over the surface? So what do you make of these moon discoveries and mysteries? Space has truly earned its moniker as the final frontier, stretching in all directions with rules of gravity and physics that do not apply on Earth. The possibilities for what might lie beyond our comprehension are endless. Some things that occur are so strange that it seems that the only explanation is one that involves aliens and other life forms. But most are none other than marvels of science that have never been seen on our small planet. Salyut 7 Angels in July of 1984. Cosmonauts on the Soviet space station Salyut 7 reported seeing a strange orange light. The space station was suddenly surrounded by the light, and it even came through the walls of the station. The light was so bright, the crew temporarily went blind. Once they regained their vision, they looked through the portholes for the source of the orange light. Since the Salyut 7 had experienced fires and other types of emergencies already, but they found nothing of the sort. Instead, the cosmonauts claimed to have seen 7 angels floating around right outside the station. They said the angels looked similar to humans, but with wings and halos. The angels stayed close to the space station for another 10 minutes. Then they disappeared. 12 days later, a team from the Soyuz T-12 spacecraft joined the Salyut 7 crew. Just a short time later, they saw the same orange light. The light surrounded the space station, and they saw the angels outside again. This time, the crew said that the angels were as big as an airliner. The Soviet Union decided that this discovery should remain top secret, and they ordered the crew not to tell anyone what they saw. Some tried to dismiss these claims by saying that the crew were hallucinating. After all, they had been in the space station for 155 days when they first saw the angels, so they were stressed and probably exhausted. Some believe hallucinations could have also been caused by a lack of oxygen and pressure fluctuations. But how could they all have the same hallucinations? This also doesn't explain how the second crew saw the angels since they hadn't been there long. It has also been suggested that similar sightings have been secretly reported by many other Russian cosmonauts as well. Michio Kaku predicts alien contact. Michio Kaku has gained a reputation as a renowned physicist and futurist. Having written numerous books on scientific topics, gained popularity as a presenter and achieved recognition as the co-founder of string field theory, he is well regarded as an authority in the field of science. Michio made headlines when he claimed that humans would encounter alien life forms within this century. I think we will pick up a signal from an intelligent civilization in outer space in this century. However, that doesn't mean we'll have a two-way conversation. They could be many hundreds of light years away, so it would take hundreds of years for a conversation to take place. But when that takes place, when we do eavesdrop on an intelligent civilization in outer space, that could be a turning point in the history of civilization on Earth. He claims that life throughout the Milky Way is inevitable, adding that when we look out into the night sky, we must realize that someone could be looking back, also wondering if other life forms may exist in our solar system. Michio also claims that we won't just find any signs of life, but also intelligent life. Our galaxy is potentially packed with billions of Earth-like planets that could host a variety of different life forms. Although the actual number of exoplanets far exceeds the 4,000 that have already been recorded and verified, the number of Earth-like planets in our galaxy is estimated to be around 6 billion. Michio explains that when we do encounter life on other planets, we would first need to determine what category of species they are, breaking them down into three types, Type 1, Type 2 as Type 3 civilizations. A Type 1 civilization would be roughly 100 years more advanced than our current state on Earth. A Type 2 civilization would be stellar and would be a few thousand years ahead of us. A Type 3 civilization would be over 100,000 years more advanced, be able to control black holes and roam space at will. Kaku highlights the dangers we face when encountering other life forms, as we are Type 0. He claims we would need to identify the type of civilization they are and the threat they pose. Though Michio thinks that for the most part they will leave us be, as there's no need to plunder our planet for resources, but they will no doubt be curious. The great attractor on planet Earth, gravitational force, is inevitable as everything that goes up comes down eventually. The great attractor, just as the name suggests, attracts galaxies to itself just like the way a magnet does to metal. It operates as a gravitational anomaly. The great attractor is a gravitational abnormality in intergalactic space and the apparent central gravitational point of the Lanikai supercluster. When observed, the great attractor is difficult to be envisioned, as it is inconveniently obscured by large clusters of galaxies in our Milky Way's galactic plane. A lot of astronomers have been curious if planet Earth is safe with the discovery of the existence of the great attractor by NASA. The Great Attractor was explored and discovered by NASA to have been located on the border of Triangulum Austral and Norma. This field covers part of the Norma cluster as well as a dense area of our own galaxy. The Norma cluster is the closest massive galaxy cluster to the Milky Way and lies about 220 million light-years away. The Great Attractor was recorded by astronomers to be an enormous concentration of masses and occupies a region of space which dominates our region of the universe. One of the distinguished characteristics of the Great Attractor also is that the gravitational abnormality is observable by its effects on the motion of galaxies and their associated clusters. Over a region of hundreds of millions of light-years across, its visibility inconvenient to observe at optical wavelengths. A whole range of tactics need to be in place for observations such as infrared or radio observations, but the region just behind the center of the Milky Way, where visibility is obscured, remains yet a complete mystery to astronomers. The supernova. Scientist Carl Sagan has said that we humans are made of star stuff. This may sound like a line of poetry, but what he has said has some truth in it. While we may not exactly be made of stars in their entirety, it turns out that elements discovered in the aftermath of the star, scientifically referred to as a supernova, contains just the same stuff found in human bodies, and indeed the world as a whole. Supernovae are explosions caused when a star larger than the Sun collapses. These explosions carry with them silver, nickel, copper, calcium, and iron amongst other elements found in our own bodies. They are extremely bright and powerful explosions due to producing massive amounts of energy from its core, which causes the star to become extremely hot. Eventually, the pressure from the core cannot withstand its own gravitational force, causing the star to collapse. Astronomers discovered a supernova explosion from a star larger than the Sun, the S9 2016 APS. It was discovered by scientists at the Center for Astrophysics. Although the SN 2016 APS supernova was first spotted in 2016, scientists have been studying it and finding more information about the star itself and the collapse of it. It is the brightest, most energetic, and likely biggest supernova ever to be observed. With an explosion strength 10 times the energy of most normal-sized supernovas. The research team was able to measure it using the total energy of the explosion and its radiation. They found that the SN 2016 APS emitted 5 times the explosion energy of a typical supernova. They were also able to discover that its mass was 50 to 100 times more than the Sun's. This collapse happened 4 billion light-years away. Therefore, looking at it is much like looking back in time, as it takes all that time for evidence of these explosions to reach the Earth. Scientists suggest that the extraordinary brightness and energy levels may hint at something even more interesting, what is known as a pulsational pair instability supernova. This is when two massive stars merge before exploding, which may explain its unusual size. Radiation and light emission. The theory is that two stars combined just before the explosion, causing a notable increase in hydrogen and a mass high enough to trigger the pair instability and therefore the explosion. A follow-up study of SN 2016 APS revealed high levels of hydrogen gas. This is unusual because larger stars tend to lose their hydrogen to powerful stellar winds when becoming supernovae. It is only stars with lower masses that can hold onto their hydrogen because the explosions are not as formidable and therefore allow for more attention. This supernova is the first of many that scientists hope to discover and research, and it is believed that it has opened the pathways to greater discoveries. With their more powerful telescopes, they will be able to find more and more supernovae like this one. Discovering these supernovae are a form of looking back in time, back to the early history of the universe. Scientists hope to find even earlier and older supernovae, and they believe that they will. If there's anything we can take away from these discoveries, it's that the world is a surprising and fascinating place. Whether in a field in the middle of New York or the Siberian Arctic or out in space, there's always something to find out and learn about. Evidence of the past can remind us that much has happened and therefore will happen, but that the universe and the Earth carry on. Whether an unexplained extinction or the collapse of thousands of stars, the universe has survived. The past shows us that a future is possible and we are living in it. Even if much is left to mystery, what we do find out and get to know is exciting and fascinating. And even if we don't always know everything now, someone, somewhere will one day open the mystery safe of the universe and we'll be able to look back on the once ambiguous history with fresh eyes. GRB 190114C gamma-ray burst. Gamma-ray bursts are incredibly powerful astronomical events that were first noted by scientists around 46 years ago. Although mysterious and not fully understood, they are fairly common and can be observed randomly in space almost every day. The most common cause of a gamma-ray burst is when an enormous star, exponentially larger than our own sun, runs out of fuel. The core collapses on itself, forming a black hole, which then projects particle rays from inside the blast through the outer remnants of the star. These initial particle rays react with the mass around it to form hugely powerful jets of gamma rays, which are the most highly energetic wavelength and move at almost 100% the speed of visible light. These initial bursts last for only a minute or two, followed by what scientists have termed the afterglow. This afterglow surrounds the site of the burst for several months following the event and is caused by the continued interaction of the ejected jets with surrounding space particles, which emit light on all frequencies across the wavelength spectrum from radio waves to gamma rays. Such a collapse of matter resulting in long-lasting jets of incredibly powerful gamma waves is collectively known as a gamma-ray burst phenomenon and is widely studied in the field of astronomy. Previously, because the initial bursts are so short-lived and occur randomly in space, Research regarding this phenomenon was limited to what astrologists could observe from the long-lasting afterglows, which are a representation of the burst event at lower energies. Because these events are the most powerful explosions in the universe, and understanding is limited to conclusions gathered from study of the phenomenon at its least energetic form, researchers have made numerous attempts to view and capture the initial gamma-ray burst, not just the afterglow, for analysis. And on the afternoon of January 14, 2019, they had a stroke of luck. NASA's Fermi Gamma-Ray Space Telescope and Neil Gehrels Swift Observatory detected the gamma radiation from a pair of enormous bursts originating from the Fornax constellation and alerted the Major Atmospheric Gamma Imaging Cherenkov Observatory, which was able to automatically detect and record the burst of a mere 50 seconds after it began. The two gamma-ray bursts, named GRB 190114C, emitted the highest energy rays ever witnessed in such an event, making the gamma rays projected from the site of the burst the highest energy wavelengths ever recorded. Researchers are still attempting to determine whether or not the unusually dense environment of the system, which occurred at the nuclear center of several interconnecting galaxies, was what might have been conducive to such a large burst. This documentation of a component of a gamma-ray burst that has not been able to be widely studied, especially when the event in question is the largest ever recorded, will help scientists to look at gamma-ray theory from an entirely new perspective. Further analysis of the recordings of the initial event compared with continued study of the afterglow will radicalize the way that scientists study gamma-ray theory. A trend that's seen across popular science fiction movies and numerous depictions of extraterrestrials that have the ability to telepathically communicate with an outside species or amongst themselves. This has been a long-held belief of amateur researchers and has been witnessed time and time again by abductees and the accounts they detailed during their encounters. Claims of supposed instances of telepathy can vary from different detailed images in their mind that appear to be symbols, mathematical expressions, complex images, hearing a voice inside their head, and even being unable to discern their own thoughts with the thoughts being planted inside their minds. Physicists and scientists have recently announced that due to there being billions of planets in the Milky Way galaxy, and due to there being billions of galaxies, the likelihood of extraterrestrial life being out there is high, and this can be backed up with mysterious signals and exoplanets that's being discovered every year. Given the scientific evidence and developments of the human brain, is there a way to explain whether advanced life forms may be reading our minds? Before we continue further, it's important to note that there is evidence in scientific endeavors in the realm of neuroscience, and the ability to translate the neurons near the random electrical impulse throngs into a readable information that can be displayed or understood. In fact, back in 1999, there was a research study by Dan Yong at the University of Berkeley, California, that successfully recreated what a cat observes in the physical world, using pure data retrieved from visual neurons. So how can we retrieve data from neurons, and how does this help us? Though many might not believe it and still regard such scientists as within the realm of supernatural, this is hardly the case. Using an EEG machine, one can gather information from the brain using a differential amplifier, which merely works to gather data from two electrical inputs and measures the differences compared against each other in electrical occurrence and shows that data as an output. That means that data can be retrieved from the brain by merely detecting the electrical impulses through the scalp of a human being and comparing it to other regions of the brain as a whole. The implications of this finding means that if someone could create a technology so sensitive and accurate in picking up electromagnetic fields or electrical stimuli, one could remotely detect these occurrences coming from the human brain, and work together the data required to translate your thoughts and brain signals into readable information. But that does not help to explain the strange phenomenon that occurs in supposed alien contacts via telepathic communications. If such a device is used, then how is it that humans, when exposed to extraterrestrial life, have the ability to communicate telepathically back to said alien contacts? And why is there no mention of the appearance of such a device? It could very well be that the alleged extraterrestrials evolved this ability to communicate telepathically through natural means in their evolutionary pathways. All life will evolve some ability and means to communicate with their own kin. And not all methods include vocalizations like human communications. Some forms of life use smells, physical contact, body language, and so on. So is it within the realm of impossibility for telepathic communication to have occurred for intellectually advanced forms of life? Let us treat this as a thought experiment. As you advance technologically, war and technologies could become incredibly dangerous and lead to self-annihilation if these routes continue, and a lasting peace cannot be established. However, a great way to avoid contact is to establish a means of open communication and work to better understand the situation at hand. Have you ever tried to communicate a thought, but found why it's to be a terrible delivery method of translating emotions, personal experiences, observations, and context? What if all life that develops methods of communications that not able to more accurately represent their inner monologues also lose the ability to equally grow their intelligence as a species? Or, in this sense, annihilate themselves before becoming an intergalactic race? Could it be then that an intergalactic species would have to naturally form telepathic communications to prevent such catastrophes and be able to advance? Is there evidence of animals on Earth that might be able to evolve in this manner? If we take this theory of data retrieval from the brains of animals via sensing electrical impulses and changes in the electromagnetic field, then there's evidence of evolution granting this ability amongst life here on Earth. Referred to as electroreception is a sense that humans do not seem to possess that gives animals the ability to perceive natural electrical stimuli and other life forms around them. Electroreception on Earth has only been seen to occur almost exclusively in aquatic life or amphibious animals that spend their time in salt water. Since salt water is a much better natural conductor compared to the surrounding air, this ability is so sensitive, in fact, that young sharks can recognize the specific characteristics and traits of electrical stimuli among predators and hide before the creatures even come within sight. Could this be evidence of life on our very own planet naturally developing methods in evolution that allow for nonverbal communication via electrical signals and readings through telepathy alone? Another interesting development in UFO and alien research is the lack of verbal communication from extraterrestrial contacts. There are no reports of a screaming, screeching, yelling, or vocalization of any kind coming from supposed encounters. Could this be a statistical reference for their inability to communicate verbally and only telepathically? Regardless of what you make of these encounters, it's interesting that those who have claimed to have been contacted or share this, saying that whatever they encountered, all of them noted that there was no speaking during the encounter. So what do you make of these interesting observations? And what do you make of those who have reported encountering alleged extraterrestrials? Scientists have said that a huge earthquake is going to hit the southern San Andreas Fault, but revealed that we don't know when this is going to happen, but said it could be any time now. A fault line is basically a large crack in the earth, with the San Andreas Fault line being a strike-slip fault. This event occurs when two tectonic plates slide past each other. Experts in California have said it's around 80 years overdue for the big one, which is the name that they've given to a massive earthquake that they said would devastate the area. The recent earthquake activity hasn't given scientists much hope either, with them noting that although the low tremors that hit Southern California back in June didn't do much damage, the big one would be an entirely different story, saying that the cost of damage could easily go to around $200 to $250 billion, and that thousands of people could lose their lives. The U.S. Geological Survey has reported there's a 20 to 35% chance of the big one happening, with experts saying this would be around 7.5 to 8.5 in magnitude. USGS researchers have been studying the areas that would be at risk, and say that many factors play into this in regards to which areas would be affected the most. New estimations have also revealed that the big one may be even higher than 8 in magnitude. The area has been hit by a big earthquake in the past, with the last big one happening back in 1906, which was recorded as being a 7.9 magnitude earthquake, and that actually ended up moving the fault by 300 miles. 3,000 people lost their lives, and it's since become known as one of the worst earthquakes of all time. Over 80% of San Francisco had been destroyed, and large fires broke out that went on. For one of the problems that scientists face is trying to predict when these large earthquakes are going to happen. With San Jose State University jeweler's Kimberly Blasnick saying the following, "The San Andreas Fault is one of the best studied faults in the world, and there's still so much we can do." End quote. Back in 2019, researchers working in California reported that 2 large earthquakes had hit the region. They measured in at 6.4 and 7.1 in magnitude and said that this raised the chances of the big one happening, saying that although it doesn't increase it by much, it could have increased the chances of it happening by 1 to 2% within the next few years. John Vidal, a professor of earth science, said the following about the big one and how it could devastate California. Here in California, you have dangers from a number of different kinds of earthquakes. The major danger is from the earthquakes on the San Andreas Fault system. We haven't had a big earthquake in Southern California really since 1857. So basically we're overdue on. It's moving the ground several yards over an area of 50 square miles, so the power of a magnitude 7.8 earthquake is probably close to the power used in the whole state for a year. Basically something that we as a civilization have trouble creating. Sort of like a nuclear explosion. People have this idea of running out of bed and out of their buildings, and that's a terrible idea. Because a lot of what we see in earthquakes is people with broken legs and people who've run through glass. The best thing to do, like we always say, is duck, cover, and hold. Get under some piece of furniture. The main point is to protect your head and chest because the San Andreas will produce the kind of long period of shaking, which would be very damaging to very tall buildings, say in downtown LA's Century City and Long Beach and so forth. Older, still buildings, the connections in them have not necessarily been designed to withstand the maximum forces that can actually be generated, end quote. Seismic expert Dr. Jinneth Hudnut said the following, "What's next is a really tough problem for us, but it's actually what everybody wants to know. But just because we can create a plausible scenario does not mean it's going to happen." Seth Steen of Northwestern University said the following, "The trouble is the uncertainties on all the numbers in this sequence are huge, and you're cascading those all together." Seismologist Dr. Lucy Jones said the following on social media, "I'm surprised we haven't had it yet. We average 150 years between San Andreas events, and it's been 350 on the southernmost part, but we could actually go another 50 or more. The time between big quakes seems to be Poissonian, but means that the time since the last quake doesn't matter." One person asked whether we could get 2 big ones a matter of weeks apart, and she responded with the following, "Absolutely. This graph is the time between big quakes at one location on the San Andreas Fault. The average is 100 years, but 3 times it was less than 50, and once more than 300. If they were 1 week apart, they would look like one event in the geology." The United States Geological Survey said the following about the 1906 earthquake. "The San Francisco earthquake and fire of April 18, 1906 took around 700 lives and caused millions of dollars worth of damage in California. The earthquake was felt as far away as Oregon and central Nevada. The 1906 earthquake has been estimated at a magnitude 8.3 on the Richter scale. Surface offsets occurred along a 250-mile length of the fault. An earthquake magnitude of 7.1 occurred along a previously unrecognized fault in the Imperial Valley. Similar movement on the Imperial Fault occurred during an earthquake in November 1979. The greatest surface displacement was 17 feet of right lateral stroke slip in the 1940 earthquake. Clearly, this fault is part of the San Andreas system. Other earthquakes of probable magnitude of 7 or larger occurred on the Hayward Fault in 1836 and 1868, on the San Andreas Fault in 1838. End quote. As of right now, researchers have said that all they can do is keep an eye on any changes on the data, but always end by saying that the big one is going to happen. It's just when, so what do you make of these announcements? And do you think the big one will occur within your lifetime? Antarctica is one of the least explored places on planet Earth. The first sighting of Antarctica is now acknowledged to have taken place around January 1820, and this was by 2 Russian ships. Fast forward to the 1930s, and teams of scientists and researchers have tried to extensively map and explore Antarctica. And although there's no permanent residents that call this place home, many workers do live in Antarctica, helping to study the environment and carry out scientific tests. Ever since early explorers touched down in this region, though, there's been whispers of strange goings-on throughout the area, leading amateur researchers to conduct their own research in order to get to the bottom of some of these mysteries. Most of these comments and theories usually stem from somewhere, whether it's a strange photograph taken from a satellite or comments that have been made by early explorers. The reason why Antarctica is so fascinating to many people is because of how little we know about the area, and due to the constant findings that are being made on top of and below the ice. Only recently, scientists had announced that there's an unseen world living beneath Antarctica, which likely hold thousands of new species which are not known to modern science. These incredible creatures can give us an insight into how animals can adapt to different environments. And we may be able to apply some of this information to places within our solar system. Being able to survive in these extreme environments is a perfect example of life finds a way. Back in December 1955, explorers met part of Antarctica and revealed that they'd found a dome. Certain communities picked up on this and started saying that this is proof that something strange is happening in Antarctica, and this is the proof they needed. The book that detailed this is the 1958 Encyclopedia Americana. It reads as follows. These flights prove the inland areas to be featureless in character, with a dome 13,000 feet high at a latitude 80 degrees south, longitude 90 degrees east. End quote. Those who believe the strange goings-on in Antarctica and believe this planet is different to this scientific belief have said that scientists found a large dome above Antarctica, and this is the real reason why people can't go there or fly above the region. One person who believes in these theories said the following, "This is the real reason why you can't visit and explore Antarctica. What many people don't know is that the air is heavily guarded by the government, and it's near impossible to fly above these regions. To me, it sounds like they're trying to keep people out. And the reason they're doing this is because something is down there that they don't want the people knowing about. We now have proof of this huge dome down in Antarctica, and it wouldn't surprise me if this, along with other things, is the main reason why they're trying to stop people from going down there." End quote. Others carried on from this and said this is just one of the things that's been found in the region, going on to say that many explorers have detailed seeing other strange things when flying above the icy continent. One user said that every year satellites capture strange-looking objects that appear to be embedded in the snow, saying that this could be proof of advanced civilizations that happened to live in this region thousands of years ago, or that it could show that large operations are being carried out here by governments across the world, and the reason some of these photographs are blurred is because they don't want us to know what's going on. Not everyone is entirely convinced, though, and people quickly shut down these claims, saying that the people spreading the wrong message are those that don't understand the correct terminology. The truth here is that dome in terms of geology means a large structure that's formed by rostrata. These domes usually have an arch-like shape and can reach thousands of feet in height. One good way of describing these domes is like someone cutting a tennis ball in half, although scientists have noted that not all domes are perfectly rounded. Some of the ways that these large domes develop is with the help of magma. This magma flow eventually pushes up surface rock layers, which in turn gives us this dome look. In fact, the official Antarctica website said the following about the discovery. Dome Arcus has a surface elevation of 4,093 meters, or 13,428 feet. It's the highest place in East Antarctica. It's also one of the least known places on the globe. An automatic weather station provides data from this remote site. Dome Arcus lies near one end of a ridge around 60 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide, or 37.2 miles long and 6.2 miles wide. The ice there is more than 3,000 meters thick, overlaying the subglacial Ganvertsev Mountains. The world's lowest temperature ever recorded was -89.2 degrees, and this happened in July 1983 at the Russian station Vostok, inland of Australia's Kazi Station. Arcus is nearly 600 meters high in elevation than Vostok. This means there's a good chance that the automatic weather station at Dome Arcus could record the world's lowest surface temperature. The coldest temperature to date was -82.5 degrees, and this happened in July 2005. The automatic weather station at Dome Arcus was set up as part of the Australian-Chinese collaboration in January 2005. No ground-based scientific investigation had been made at this site before the arrival of the Chinese Oversnow Transverse Team. The weather station measures wind speed, air temperature with sensors mounted on mast arms at 1 meter, 2 meter, 4 meters above the snow surface. Snow temperature is 0.1 meters, 1 meter, 3 meters, and 10 meters in depth, atmospheric pressure, wind direction, incoming solar radiation, relative humidity, and snowfall ain't. So what do you make of these interesting discoveries? And what do you make of some of the mysteries around Antarctica? We've long been fascinated with the creatures of the past. It's hard to imagine that our planet was once inhabited by giant predators such as the Tyrannosaurus rex and the Megalodon. But fossil evidence has shown us that these behemoths once ruled the world. Megalodon could easily reach lengths of up to 60 feet and had a bite force more powerful than that of Tyrannosaurus rex. Scientists have said that the giant Megalodon is no more, and some of the explanations given for its extinction is that of competition from smaller sharks, namely the great white, geological changes, and their prey, which mostly consisted of large whales moving to colder waters. Megalodon's true size has long been debated by researchers, and it was estimated that it grew between 50 and 60 feet in length. However, 2021 studies have suggested that it was likely larger, with new estimates putting the shark at 65 feet in length. This massive size would have meant that the Megalodon would have been the ultimate ruler of the oceans, taking down pretty much everything that it came into contact with. Though many would remark that the size of the Megalodon made it an incredible predator that helped to allow the creature to dominate the oceans during its reign, the truth is that the creature's large stature actually proved to be more of a hindrance in nature than an actual benefit. In order to support its massive body weight and muscle growth, the body of the Megalodon had a tremendous metabolism that only caused the creature to require massive amounts of food and resources constantly available in its environment in order not to starve. This calorie requirement would have forced the Megalodon to eat more than 2,500 pounds of meat a day, and this was just to survive, making it very likely that the giant shark would starve if it found itself in an area void of large abundances of natural prey. Given the fact that the massive shark was made up of mostly turtles and seals, the Megalodon would have been forced to be in a constant state of predation just to meet its daily calorie requirements, even going as far as possibly eating its own young in times of stress, and engaging in risky behaviors just to locate a possible food source that would most likely deplete in a short matter of time. Scientists have said that the Megalodon is long extinct and that our oceans today cannot support such a large creature, saying that they haven't seen any evidence that would suggest that the massive shark somehow survived into the modern day. This hasn't stopped people from coming forward with eyewitness encounters and photographs claiming that not only is there a giant shark roaming around in our oceans, but that it could very well be the Megalodon or a shark that evolved from it. A recent photograph was posted to an online group that investigates cryptic sightings and encounters, with the man saying that the photograph was taken in Mexico's Baja, California. The man, who'd clearly translated the post, went on to detail that the photograph came courtesy of a fisherman, and that they wanted to get people's opinion on what it was, saying that the creature was large, easily over 30 feet in length. Matched descriptions of a large dark-colored shark that had been seen in the area. The sea surrounding this area is filled with great white sharks, and it's known to be a famous hunting ground for them. But interestingly, many fishermen and boaters have reported that when these larger sharks turn up, pretty much instantly all of the great white sharks swim away, indicating that this is some type of super predator that swims throughout the region, possibly using it as some type of hunting ground. The reason people have said this is because the same thing happens when great white sharks encounter orcas, which has led to some researchers saying that the great whites will actively avoid orcas whenever they're near. There's some cryptid researchers that suggest the Megalodon still exists and that it moved to deeper waters. But another suggestion by locals of the region is that this shark could be the black demon shark, a shark that's been reported by locals and fishermen for the past couple of decades. Though many researchers are well aware of the existence of many types of different shark and animal species throughout the area, there's one that's remained a mystery. Many believe that it would have been fairly impossible for the Megalodon shark species to survive, especially after major extinction events and the changes in the pH levels of the oceans. arguing that no shark could ever reach such a monstrous size again. This claim seems to be in jeopardy, however, as reports of a massive black shark has been spotted off the shores of Mexico's Baja California peninsula. These reports and sightings have been made by a number of fishermen across the Mexican coast that claim to see a massive black shark roughly 60 feet in length, resembling the build of a great white shark, but with that of a dark coloration across its body and a massively sized tail. Given the fact that many of these reports fit many of the modern-day recreations using megalodon skeletons, as well as their average tail size, it's led many to believe that it could be a possible hunting ground for the creature. Additionally, many of the fishermen that have reported the sighting have been veterans in the field, never having once claimed such sightings in the past, and having enough experience with different species of whales throughout the region. Fishermen have long debated the true size of a great white shark, with some experts saying that the great white can reach up to 30 feet in length, with unconfirmed reports saying that they grow even bigger than this. Some have also said that due to food sources being hard to come by throughout this region, this could be why the black demon shark is only sighted a few times throughout the year, saying that once it's filled up it then moves on to another location, only to return a few months later to repeat the process. Scientists have said this would have been something that the megalodon would have struggled with, given the creature's massive size and its constant need for an adequate amount of calories just to survive. This led the megalodon to ultimately become a species that suffered from a high rate of competition with both neighboring species in its own kind. Many times in the animal kingdom, having a much larger physique allows certain evolutionary advantages when it comes in the realm of competition. Other times it can lead to a much higher resource scarcity for the species. The megalodon, due to its large size, was capable of eating a wider range of foods that included schools of fish, turtles, seals, and every now and then a lone whale. The megalodon was constantly competing with those animals' natural predators. This also meant that their finely tuned ecosystem could only support a lower population density of the megalodon, due to its constant competition with members of its own species. This translates into not only the megalodon being a mostly solitary marine animal, but a tremendously high risk of not finding a mate given their incredibly low population numbers. This translates into a much higher risk of inbreeding within the species when there's a lack of variation in the potential males that will begin to manifest recessive genetic traits and birth defects in their offspring. Deep within the waters of our world seems to be a number of impossible to explain artifacts and creatures that have continued to baffle scientists. More than 80% of the ocean has never been mapped or explored, and this has led people to suggest that large creatures could be lurking within the depths and could be behind some of the mysterious encounters that people detail. Scientists have said that we've mapped more of the Moon and Mars surface than our very own oceans, so until we further explore these regions, we can't say for sure that they're just stories. So what do you make of this interesting photograph? Antarctic Lake is full of life. Antarctica is known for being a place where life does not flourish. Although creatures such as penguins, seals, and krill do inhabit the barren land, most of these species do not live there year-round and migrate elsewhere to escape the totally inhospitable and brutal winter. When researchers visit, the conditions are so extreme that they must take intense precautions to prevent hypothermia or worse. The last thing that any of these researchers expected to find was an area actually teeming with life, but that is exactly what they stumbled upon. Under an ice sheet about 3,500 feet thick lies a lake about 50 feet deep and 54 miles square. Researchers interested in studying this lake use drills and hot water to break through the layer of ice and take 15 gallons of water samples and a sediment core over 15 feet long from the dark water below. What these samples revealed surprised the researchers. Study and analysis determined that the subglacial lake was positively teeming with bacterial life, and the samples taken contained an average of 10,000 bacterial cells per milliliter. Although this number may seem paltry in comparison to the 1 million bacterial cells per milliliter in samples taken from the ocean for a totally sunless underground lake, the numbers are astonishing. The fact that there is such a relative abundance of organic matter means that the lake could very likely be supporting other, more complex life forms, which the research expedition will begin to search for soon. A nearby subglacial lake also revealed abnormally high levels of bacteria during an expedition in 2013, which further validates these more recent findings and leads researchers to theorize that the lakes were at one point connected to the larger ocean thousands of years ago, and thus have remnants of carbon deposits from early photosynthesizing organisms that allow the modern-day bacteria to survive. The discovery of such a surprising abundance of life forms is important to researchers for two reasons. The first is that it gives hope and guidance to the search for extraterrestrial life forms, especially on Mars, which has evidence of dried-up underground saltwater lakes not unlike the one uncovered in the Antarctic. The second benefit of this discovery for researchers is that it provides important information about the history of Antarctica and what that now uninhabited place might have looked like thousands of years ago. Scientists who are studying these underground lakes believe that there could be over 400 such examples scattered throughout Antarctica, and rather than a gigantic ice sheet covering the Earth's surface, the barren land is actually more like a frozen wetland with rivers and lakes as big as some of the Amazonian bodies of water. Further analysis of the subglacial lakes will continue to shed more light on what might actually be a more complex ecosystem than anyone has yet realized. The Money Pit and the Inscribed Stone. In 1795, an exciting discovery was made upon Oak Island by 16-year-old Daniel McGinnis. McGinnis had been adventuring over to Oak Island for a fishing trip when he stumbled across a tree with markings upon it, which evidently were not natural. Beneath the tree a depression could be seen, with some neighboring trees having been removed. At least to Daniel McGinnis, that something may be buried beneath, though others point to a blockhand tackle hanging from the limb of a tree being the factor that encouraged further exploration of the unusual site. McGinnis, with the aid of two friends, got to digging. Despite the speculation as to other reasons, presumably the motivating factor to investigate the site is the piracy history of Oak Island. Oak Island was described as being in the golden age of piracy, according to the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic. With Nova Scotia having very few European settlements within the 18th century, it was common knowledge that pirates would frequent the seas and lands surrounding Oak Island, and so presumably Oak Island itself. With Oak Island being relatively uninhabited, it was the perfect place for these pirates to leave their treasures, with a famous confirmed example being Captain William Kidd, who admittedly buried his wealth in 1699. As the boys dug, they began to uncover a layer of flagstone. Though despite initial excitement, beneath it was only more dirt. Further investigation led the boys to find rotten wooden timbers that had been driven into the tunnel wall at approximately 10 feet deep. The same discovery was made again at 20 feet. These barriers continued to appear at regular intervals, blocking the teenage team from success. Eventually, the team decided to halt their excavation, having found very little, and returned in 2 weeks' time when their mission met a similar end. Years later, in 1804, a significantly larger group returned to conduct a formal excavation, eventually revealing a pit, which many theorized was created to conceal jewels or other items of monetary value. Once the team hit 90 feet deep into the Money Pit, a granite stone was discovered. This stone had some rather peculiar inscription symbols that even to this day have never been successfully translated. Whilst this stone is yet to be cracked, many guesses and partial suggestions have been made, with the leading theory being that this stone's mysterious message translates to 40 feet below 2 million pounds are buried. A translation presented by Lychee, professor of languages at Dalhousie University. This message might simply be some hopeful souls feeling optimistic as to Oak Island's legends of treasure existing, or may give us another clue and place us one step closer to the fortune we suspect is hidden. The key to the code is believed to be found within Edgar Allan Poe's The Gold Bug, as this code appears to form the coherent sentence above. Prior to translating this sentence, the stone was allegedly used as a doorstop or as a display item in the window of a bookbinder shop to encourage people visiting. While we are yet to stumble across the 2 million pound fortune, it is an exciting mission and a well-kept secret of Oak Island. U.S. reveal battlefield-ready robots. Robotics in the battlefield has been talked about extensively over the last decade or two. With advancements in robotics being seen in multiple fields, it is no wonder that we are getting closer to the reality of robots on the battlefield. The US has revealed battlefield-ready robots, although it is worth noting that these are not autonomous humanoid robots, but more along the lines of unmanned vehicles. The PackBot was one of the first robots to enter the battlefield in 2002, which is controlled by what looks like a gamepad and is designed for use by troops and first responders to carry out dangerous missions in high-threat battlefield scenarios. It has since been improved multiple times over. The latest iteration, the 510 PackBot, is a multi-mission tactical mobile robot developed by Endeavor Robotics, which is now part of FLIR Systems. Developed by the same company and ordered by the US military in 2017, is the FLIR Centaur, a man-transportable robotic system increment to solution. According to FLIR, this remotely operated medium-sized system provides a standoff capability to detect, confirm, identify, and dispose of hazards. The Fully Interoperability Profile, or IOP, compliant, open-architected robot has a standard chassis and modular mission payloads in support of current and future missions. Centaur supports engineers, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear and explosive ordnance disposable soldiers. This system was originally meant to be fielded by 2021, but the first unit was equipped with the MRES Incorporated 2 in the second quarter of the Army's fiscal 2020. In a press release by the U.S. Army, as Brian McVeigh, the Army's project manager for force protection, stated, during recent conflicts, the Army purchased more than 7,000 unique robotic systems. The MTRS-2 is the first in a series of programs to replace these with a more flexible system. The press release also mentioned the payloads that will be integrated into MTRS-2 will allow for better remote threat detection even in low-light environments and improved remote interrogation of improvised explosive devices, allowing soldiers to determine the nature of such threats from a safe distance. Battlefield-ready robots will be advancing at a rapid pace, with the introduction of artificial intelligence, so these robots can make decisions and potentially the development of humanoid robots that can be used as soldiers. While it is unlikely that militaries will allow artificial intelligence to have those capabilities will be a possibility. Battlefield robots will evolve from unmanned vehicles to something similar to those seen on TV. It is unlikely that robots will replace human soldiers on the battlefield. They will be used in more supportive positions to enhance the capabilities of humans in battle. Where have South Africa's great whites gone? False Bay and Gowns Bay are two bodies of water off the coast of South Africa that are hotspots for great white shark activity. However, in recent years, the sightings have all but vanished. Scientists quickly grew concerned at the sudden disappearance of the water's regular inhabitants, and research quickly began to determine the source. According to the publication Munga Bay, white sharks were a very common sight in False Bay, just one of the two bodies of water of interest. From a write-up, Shark Spotters reports that between the years 2010 and 2016, there were an average of 205 sightings a year. But in 2018, that number reduced to just 50 sightings. Not one sighting occurred in 2019. Thankfully, one sighting did occur in January 2020, the first in 20 months of zero activity. The reality is that we have way more theories than we have facts to support them at the moment, says Alison Koch, a marine biologist for South African National Parks who has been researching white sharks in Africa since 1998. Great white numbers are uncertain in South Africa. Some estimates have put the population total at 500, while others suggest 900. Regardless, the number is hardly indicative of a thriving species. Sarah Andriotti of Stellenbosch University studies the genetics of white sharks around the South African coast. Andriotti's research has uncovered that sharks around the coast are actually just one group, which moves from location to location, breeding with one another. In her study conducted from 2009 to 2011, Andriotti believed to have identified 300 breeders in the population. The minimum to avoid inbreeding is 500, and according to Andriotti, our population was in real trouble already. So why did the great whites suddenly disappear from the South African coastline? Well, the answer might lie in the shark's pop culture cousin, the orca whale. Orcas are also present in the bodies of water that great whites normally thrive in. Scientists have identified two particular orca whales named Port and Starboard, which were first spotted in False Bay in 2015. Orcas have slowly increased their activity in the area since 2009, and at this time the number of deceased broad-nosed seven-gill sharks began to show up in the waters off the South African coast. Alarmingly, these were the first records of orcas hunting sharks in South Africa. A paper was published on the first documentation of a novel feeding technique. Succinctly, the orcas had been using brute force to damage the shark's pectoral girdles. This allowed the orcas to bite out the shark's livers before leaving the rest of the carcass. Orcas do this because livers are incredibly high in fat, and shark livers equal roughly a third of each shark's body weight. After the first attacks, the seven-gill sharks soon dispersed from the area. Despite being one of the world's biggest hotspots in activity for seven-gills, the sharks were gone for a month. This pattern seems to match up to the great white events post-2017. As the great white sightings began to lower, a total of 5 great whites were found washed up on the coast of Gansby, each of them missing their livers. The evidence of large teeth marks clearly pointed to the local orcas. While Port and Starboard were the only present orcas in the bay, researchers have given word of another orca in the area, resulting in continued drops in sightings. This behavior might point towards a different ecotype of orca, one that is primarily a shark eater. Reasons for this behavioral adaptation could stem from water temperature change due to climate change as well as overfishing. Where is Alexander the Great's tomb? Alexander the Great is the Macedonian king famous for his monumental empire that is still studied to this day as an example of military strategy and power. Inheriting the throne at the young age of 20, he proved to be one of the greatest military masterminds that the world had ever seen, and, with the support of his fiercely loyal soldiers, began expanding his reign into the largest empire of the time. Spanning 3 countries and leaving dozens of cities founded in his name as a testament to his conquests. Alexander's life and reign have been meticulously studied, but one thing that remains a mystery is where the once great and powerful ruler was laid to rest. After only 12 years of often brutal but unparalleled rule, Alexander the Great's reign came to an end when he passed away at age 32 from a mysterious but fatal illness. Although the emperor was such an important figurehead of the day, the circumstances of his passing are rather mysterious, and nobody is certain whether he was poisoned or passed away due to a natural illness or complications of a battle wound. Regardless, Alexander's final resting place continues to elude historians and archaeologists, although there are a few facts that can provide clues in the hunt for the deceased ruler. Firstly, it is known with absolute certainty that he passed away in Babylon and was mummified to be returned to Macedonia. However, the procession was hijacked and one of his successors, King Ptolemy of Egypt, took the body to the Egyptian city of Memphis, where the body remained until it was moved to one of his many newly completed namesake cities, Alexandria, the new capital of Egypt. Alexander was given an elaborate and stately burial, with a tomb covered in a layer of glass that allowed visitors to look upon the corpse of the once powerful ruler. The Roman Emperor Augustus recorded viewing the body during his visit in 30 BCE, but that was the last instance that historians were able to determine for sure where the body laid. Because of this, many believe that he is, without a doubt, buried somewhere in Alexandria. Although the hunt is greatly hampered by the fact that most of what was then the important and royal areas of the city are now underwater, making it nearly impossible to search the ancient ruins. However, there are other commonly proposed theories as to the final resting place of Alexander the Great. Some speculate that he was buried in the Nabi Daniel Mosque in Alexandria, which has a deep enough basement that it would have been a viable place for a respected ruler's burial during the time period. Others believe that Alexander is now buried under St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice, Italy, having been exhumed by relic searchers whom has stuck his grave for the gospel writer. Many propose that he is actually buried on the oasis of Siwa, which is a beautiful place that was said to be home to the oracle Ammon, and was thought to be considered sacred by Alexander and the place that he truly wished to be buried. After having his body on display for his many followers and former subjects to pay their last respects to the powerful man, some think that he was exhumed and reburied on Siwa, per his supposed final wishes. One thing is for sure, that nobody is certain where Alexander the Great was laid to rest, and the search continues. Finding out what dwells beneath the soil of our past is always exciting. For multiple centuries, we have been discovering great artifacts, burial grounds, tombs, and wondrous buried aspects of ancient cultures, finally coming to light after millennia of concealment. So today, we will be taking a look at 3 recent archaeological discoveries. Sealed ancient coffins in Egypt. Ancient Egypt has drawn the interest of humans for as long as the pyramids have stood on the desert sands of Giza. The fascinating world of pharaohs, hieroglyphics, and ancient gods has pulled interest from everywhere, ranging between the scientific and the conspiratorial. So it came as no surprise that the world would listen in awe when in September 2020, authorities in Egypt revealed the news that they had uncovered 13 ancient coffins, all of them totally sealed and left untouched for the past 2,500 years. Following a press conference from the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, a huge collection of ancient coffins was uncovered in Saqqara, a desert and ancient burial ground in the northernmost region of the country. Saqqara is an ancient necropolis composed of vast tomb systems hailing back to the peak of ancient Egyptian culture. The giant burial ground was used as a site to bury the deceased of the nearby city of Memphis, which was the capital city of ancient Egypt. The site is no stranger to amazing ancient artifacts, as Saqqara is home to mummies, monuments, and even pyramids. Yet what makes this recent discovery so important is these recent finds are in an unbelievable state of preservation. Only housed in wooden coffins, these mummies stand out from the thousands of other surrounding human remains because of their immaculate condition. Being completely sealed from any outside elements plays a large part. According to the release by the Egyptian Ministry, the coffins were initially discovered on top of one another, hidden within a burial shaft that reaches 36 feet underground. As a testament to their condition, some of the coffin's delicate paintwork can still be seen, with pigments still visible after thousands of years of wear. The age of these remains means that the significance is even greater. Over the years, looters and opportunists from different periods have ransacked ancient burial grounds in hope of uncovering priceless treasures. In a gargantuan necropolis such as Saqqara, this means finding remains that have been untouched since burial are fairly rare. Work has only just begun, but researchers hope to find out more about the people buried in these coffins, along with their status in ancient Egyptian society. With such well-preserved specimens, scientists can hope to glean a significant amount of new information from these coffins, hopefully allowing our understanding of the ancient civilization to grow even wider. Currently, the ministry is preparing promotional videos on the exciting find, and we can hope that the discoveries may end up in a museum that is open to the public in the coming years. New dinosaur colors and designs. As paleontologists have spent the last several decades uncovering a wide variety of fossilized remains of prehistoric creatures across the Earth's distant past, they have made a number of incredible discoveries surrounding the classification of dinosaurs and their prehistoric behaviors. Such findings include full dinosaur skeletons, millions of individual species, modern-day descendants, and entire sites of sudden mass graves, and indicating periods in history of mass extinction events able to be clearly defined. Many of these discoveries helped the world of paleontology to recreate accurate depictions of such animals, with the sole exception that the colors of the species have long since been a mystery. Up until 2006, researchers believed that it would be impossible to ever uncover the mystery as to what a dinosaur's true colors were, given the fact that the pigments in the skin did not, and in the special cases in which textures of the skin were preserved or feathers of dinosaurs recovered, there was little proof as to whether the pigments recorded were the actual pigments of the dinosaur or were caused via chemical processes over time. Back in 2006, however, lead researcher Jacob Vinther made an incredible discovery surrounding fossilized ink sacs of 200-million-year-old squid species that demonstrated interesting ways in which the ink preserved itself over countless eons. This led to the research uncovering new methods at locating traces of color pigments that could have survived within the feathers of dinosaurs and could be worked with to recreate a more accurate depiction of the ancient creature's colors. Although this theory was immediately questioned, with opponents claiming that his findings were nothing more than fossilized bacteria deposits, it was not until 2010 that his findings proving his findings. This has led to a number of new discoveries, with previously held theories surrounding color and camouflage being completely thrown out the window as the true colors of long-forgotten species are being discovered for the first time. Previously held theories had assumed that dinosaurs possessed nothing more than dull colors of browns, grays, and blacks, similar to how large animals today, such as elephants and whales, possess such colors. However, using this new theory, researchers are now aware of the tremendously wide-ranging and bright colors used by ancient species, including the Anchiones huxley, of which is now known to have possessed a bright red crest with black and white stripes across its body. The Great Pyramid of Calula, despite many claiming that the ancient pyramids of Giza are the largest structures created by an ancient civilization. The truth is that is hardly the case. Located in Mexico and built by the ancient Aztec civilization is a pyramid so massive that many living on the structure believed it to be nothing more than a naturally made mountain. Known as the Great Pyramid of Calula, one of the largest structures created in the Americas, along with being a massive Aztec temple that rivals every other in creation, the structure has a base 4 times larger than that of the Giza pyramids and almost twice the total volume. The pyramid is located in the city of Puebla, Mexico, and is known as the world's largest pyramid in construction. Researchers believe that the pyramid was constructed back in 300 BC, though many accounts believe it to be far older, in honor of their ancient god, known as Quetzalcoatl. For 1,000 years, the pyramid was used as a place of worship before being abandoned by the population for a reason not totally known by researchers today. Considering the site was abandoned and no maintenance was provided, this left the humidity of the air and the never-ending downpour of rain to reclaim the mud and adobe brick used in its construction back into the formation of soil to be used for new tropical greenery, though continues to hold undisturbed layers beneath that of the layers of mud and brick on the surface. Today, excavations on the site cannot be accomplished due to an old Spanish Church of Christianity built atop the structure that locals refused to allow to be demolished to study the structure underneath, leaving it as one of the biggest mysteries of the ancient Aztec civilization. But what do you make of these archaeological stories and their findings? Seen as one of the greatest minds to have ever lived, as well as one of the greatest scientific pioneers during the golden age of scientific enlightenment, was that of Albert Einstein and his revelations surrounding the understanding of the very fabric of our reality. These discoveries are still only being proven in the modern day, and have left the scientific world in a state far more advanced than before as introductions to these strange concepts. What many are not aware of, though, is that the FBI have thousands of documents on the world-renowned physicists. The FBI investigated Albert Einstein after a string of comments he made criticizing the United States, with one document reading as follows: "Are we safe with atomic energy? As long as we have men like Einstein on our list, no. Watch out for him." End quote. One of the most interesting documents details that Albert Einstein helped the Germans build a death ray. After conducting an investigation, the following documents were penned by the FBI. Einstein was one of the many distinguished Germans who lent their influence and prestige to German communists prior to the rise of Hitler. In 1940, the army declined to clear Einstein in connection with the limited field of study for which his service was needed. After the Navy had given its assent, Einstein publicly declared in 1947 that the only real party in France with a solid organization and a precise program was the Communist Party. In May 1948, he and 10 former Nazi research brain trustors held a secret meeting to observe a new beam of light secret weapon which could be operated from planes to destroy cities. This is according to the Arlington Daily, dated on the 21st of May 1948. The Intelligence Division of the Army subsequently advised the Bureau that this information could have no foundation, and advised the machine would be effective outside the range of a few fiends. End quote. Investigations continued, and declassified papers suggest that Death Ray was actually built. Interestingly, it wasn't just Einstein that had links with this machine. A few years back, the FBI released 64 pages of unreleased documents. This includes things like papers and documents that were collected shortly after Tesla passed away. For years now, theories have been floating around as to why Tesla's work was collected by the government. Some have said that Tesla's work wasn't important and wouldn't have impacted us. If this was the case, then why did the US government quickly swoop in and collect his work? These papers would cause many people to put forward their theories on what the papers contained, and one of the reasons people believe they collected his work is because he created an incredible machine, a type of raid that would be able to take down enemies from miles away. Tesla's work obviously caught the attention of the FBI as they wanted to come through what he'd been working on. One of their reasons for doing this was to ensure that any work of his didn't get into the wrong hands. For this reason, they decided it would be best if the documents remained in the property of the Office of Alien Property Custodian. This was, however, until the documents and other pieces of Tesla's work mysteriously disappeared after the war. Interestingly, enough discussion had been created that the public was aware of some of these alleged inventions. And it even caused citizens to question Director J. Edgar Hoover about what Tesla had been working on. These are some extracts from the official FBI documents that got released. On the 26th and 27th of January 1943, an examination was made of the technical papers of Dr. Nikola Tesla, which after his decease had been stored in the Manhattan warehouse in New York City. This examination was made for the purpose of determining if any ideas of significant value in the present United States war effort could be found among his possessions. Participating in this examination were Mr. John C. Newton, New York Office of the Alien Property Custodian, Dr. Charles of the Washington Office of Scientific Research and Development, John G. Trump of the Office of Scientific Research and Development of Massachusetts Institute on Technology. The following papers, which were regarded as typical of Nikola Tesla's writings and thoughts in the period of 1925 to 1942, were removed for the purpose of record and listed below in random order in which they were found together with a brief individual abstract. Exhibit A: Possibilities of Electrostatic Generators. An updated article probably written around 1934 discussing the possibilities as a source of high-voltage DC power of the Van de Graaff type of electrostatic belt generator. The article states correctly the electrostatic principle employed in this device and points out that such generators are not suitable for commercial high-powered applications, though of undoubted scientific value. Tesla's wireless tower erected in 1902 on Long Island is stated in this memorandum to have charged to 30 million volts. Exhibit B: Reactive force of glycine and dynamite, an undated memorandum involving some calculation of the explosive power of certain compounds. In the deviating to a discussion of the possibility of transmitting power by mechanical vibrations along the Earth's crust. Exhibit C: Process of degasifying, refining, and purifying metals. A 40-page memorandum probably written about 1930 dealing with the above subject and proposing new theories of capillarity and surface tension. These correspondence indicate that this has been subjected to various industrial companies. Exhibit D: Replying to Antwerp regarding the generation of high voltage and acceleration of charged particles. This document dated 8th of November 1935. Answers questions read by Soviet engineers and scientists regarding Tesla's proposal of Ray. From this answer, it's deduced that the proposal concerned the generation of high voltages by electrostatic means. These means consisted of a high voltage terminal presumably supported on an insulated column, and charged by a gaseous charge conveying medium passing between ground and terminal. The ideas contained in this memorandum are fairly similar to the bulk conveyor electrostatic generator methods proposed by Van der Graaff and do not appear to offer any unusual features. End quotes. So what do you make of these declassified files? There are a myriad of haunted places and artifacts all over the world, some dating back hundreds of years, some with gruesome and brutal backstories, some with a sense of vengeance, and some that have a little bit of everything thrown in. The idea of hauntings evokes all kinds of emotions, images, and for some even memories. Haunting has been extensively portrayed in film and literature, often playing on the experiences of the unlucky few. That being said, ghost stories do make for good reading and watching. But what if those stories you watch or read from the safety of your sofa or bed became all the more real? So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 of the world's most haunted places and the stories behind them. Connecticut Valley Hospital. Not all places that are abandoned are haunted, but more concerning, not all haunted places are completely abandoned. The Connecticut State Hospital in Middletown is also known as the Connecticut Asylum for the Insane. Connecticut has a littered past of state-run hospitals with twisted and complex histories, but this one in particular has the most spine-chilling occurrences. If you head down Route 9 through Middletown, you might notice a collection of buildings off to the southeast on a hilltop overlooking the city. Red brick buildings looming over the whole town. These decaying structures are remnants of the past that have lingered well into the future. The hospital once held as many as 3,200 patients and was a fully functioning institution. They had a series of neglect issues within the walls of the hospital. Everything from a patient ingesting batteries, a steel nail, a razor, a top of a beer can, paper clips, and even inserted pens. 10 employees were actually charged in the case, and more than 30 were put on administrative leave. The abuse was systemic and it was terrible. The hospital was not always this way. It used to be a manicured and pleasant place for the people who stayed there. It was not until the state forced more people into it, institutionalizing not only the chronically ill, but the criminally insane, which left the hospital unable to handle the new conditions. The buildings, still in operation, stand as a cold reminder of the things that occurred within them. The ghostly environment is said to be bone-chilling and eerie. No one is allowed in or out, and what happens on the hill remains a mystery. St. Paul's Episcopal Church. St. Paul's Episcopal Church was built in 1832, when the widowed wife of John Fleming donated the land on which her late husband was buried. The land became the church and cemetery of St. Paul's. The building has stood the test of time, having the first vestry built in 1833 and the Coral Rock Church following shortly after in 1838. Following this, a series of natural disasters destroyed the church, with the figurative nail in the coffin being the destruction of St. Paul's by a hurricane just a decade after its initial construction. After a prompt rebuilding, the St. Paul's Episcopal Church appeared to stand the test of time, surviving even more events nature threw its way, including the 1886 Great Fire. The beautiful St. Paul's held the first official cemetery Key West saw. The boundless site didn't have a fence, but rather the deceased were buried up to the edges of established homes. This proved to become problematic in the forthcoming years. Key West, the home of St. Paul's Episcopal Church, is a coral rock island, preventing the depth we see today in creating grave sites. Those who passed away were buried in cement caskets, far too close to the surface of the earth. This would soon become an issue as cement dissolves in salt water. The striking of Hurricane Okeechobee resulted in the destruction of hundreds of people's final resting places. In 1928, the storm wreaked havoc, though the recession of water revealed a horror that hadn't been anticipated. The deceased bodies of those who had once been locals on the island were left around the neighborhood, in the trees or along the street, and miscellaneous bones were found along the island too. Were respectfully laid to rest once again within St. Paul's, and in keeping with his wife's wishes, the church provides sincere reassurance that John Fleming is buried there to this day, though nobody knows the precise location. Following this strange upheaval, the atmosphere of St. Paul's was forever changed, with many sightings of Fleming's ghost being reported. The assumption has been made that this sudden surge in activity was a result of his grave being disrupted by the hurricane. The description generally makes Fleming's ghost out to be a smoky white vapor, dressed in clothing typical of the 19th century, wandering St. Paul's at night. Fleming apparently isn't alone at St. Paul's, being kept in good company as other ghosts have been sighted, heard, or otherwise perceived. The crying of children has been reportedly heard, which many believe to be the spirits of children who had been buried alive at a nearby Baptist church, of a 19th century gentleman who had apparently been driven away from Key West by pirates. Pollock twins. Reincarnation, also known as rebirth or transmigration, is one theory about it not being the end when you pass away believed by many cultures. Some believe that the birth of a set of twins proves that reincarnation is real. On the 5th of May 1957, a tragedy struck the Pollock family in Hexham, England, and their two daughters, 11-year-old Joanna and 6-year-old Jacqueline passed away due to a car accident. On their way to church, the girls passed away almost instantaneously, and another child, a friend, passed away on the way to hospital. The driver was a woman who had been forcibly separated from her own children and reportedly tried to take her own life by driving after taking aspirin and phenobarbital. The case made headlines across Britain. On the 4th of October 1958, Joanna and Jacqueline's mother, twins named Jillian and Jennifer. The similarities between the twins and the deceased girls started to show at birth. The twins, although identical, had different birthmarks. Jennifer had a birthmark on her left hip that was similar to the one that Jacqueline had in the same position. Also, she had a small birthmark on her forehead that resembled a scar Jacqueline got from falling in a bucket aged 3 years old. The parents moved the family to Whitley Bay, England, to get a fresh start before the twins turned 1. As the twins grew, they began to say and remember things that they should not have known. The girls began to ask for their deceased sister's toys by name, despite those toys being kept away. Once the twins were 4 years old, the family moved back to Hexham and the strange occurrences continued. The girls were able to name landmarks they had never seen. They knew the favorite locations of their deceased sisters and believed that they had attended school where Jacqueline and Joanna were enrolled when they passed away. The girls were also terrified of cars and running engines. It got stranger. Florence noticed Jennifer and Jillian playing chilling games. Jillian cradled Jennifer's head saying, "There's blood coming out of your eyes." According to their father, John, the twins often talked about the accident between themselves. The twins had similar tastes for foods, clothes, and music as their deceased sisters. However, all memories of their past life seemed to disappear shortly after the twins turned 5. Some people believe that these twins prove that reincarnation is real. Others said the girls were influenced by their older brothers. The twins were studied by a psychologist named Dr. Ian Stevenson, who researched proof of reincarnation in children. They were just one of many cases of reincarnation that the psychologist studied. The twins were covered in one of Stevenson's books, which also contained 13 other cases. In total, Stevenson studied over 2,500 cases of reincarnation over a 40-year career. The question still remains regarding reincarnation, but the case of the Pollock twins is compelling evidence. Titanic is one of many modern tragedies. The sheer death count, the iconic claims that it was unsinkable, and the famous 1997 Leonardo DiCaprio film have all cemented its place in our history books. One of the deadliest ships in the world certainly isn't going to fade from our memories anytime soon. With more than 1,500 casualties, this is the deadliest cruise ship to ever sail during peacetime. Unfortunate tends to invite intrigue, and the Titanic is no different. The vainglorious White Star Line ship sank in the North Atlantic Ocean on April 15, 1912, when it hit an iceberg on its very first journey. The famous ship advertised and claimed as unsinkable, yet it failed to survive its maiden voyage. Whilst this ironic twist in what could have been a momentous journey is crushing and has permanently stained the pages of history, the morals of getting ahead of oneself, overestimating their abilities, and being too confident are not lost on the modern audience. From the captain of the ship and the wealthy first-class passengers to the emigrants moving to the USA for a better future, everyone had a less than unsinkable experience. The allegedly foolproof safety features included watertight doors, space for 48 lifeboats, and of course the stellar advertisement and public attention. Despite the 48 lifeboat spaces, the Titanic carried just 20, 4 of which proved difficult to use, leaving enough spaces for 1,178 people. Out of the estimated 2,224 passengers and crew aboard, just over half the number of boats needed. So it is without a doubt that you've heard of this major historical event where the unthinkable happened and the unsinkable sunk. Perhaps you've seen the hit movie, sat in your history class making notes, or maybe you even have ancestors who boarded the ship itself. No matter how many times we revisit this event, there is so much history that we don't tell about the Titanic. So many pages go unread and so many stories are left untold. So today, we will be delving into the stories behind 3 rare Titanic images. Rare Titanic Love Letters offers insight into life on board the Titanic. Even today, with the ease of texting, DMing, or emailing someone, there is something so lovely about a handwritten letter. Whether it's a birthday card or a reminder posted, handwritten pieces prove to be of great sentimental value. Even when we didn't have the choice but to write, the notes and messages left are still ever so meaningful. Of course, it isn't without surprise that a passenger on the world's first unsinkable ship, the almighty and highly fantastic Titanic, would write home. One letter written by Kate Buss on April 10, 1912, just 5 days before the worst would happen, lays out some of the experiences she had as a second-class passenger. The letter, sent by Kate Buss, was received by Percy James and has been kept by the family since he first opened it. And how the journey was going. Some details are seemingly trivial, speaking of being tired and heading to, quote, dinner tea in half an hour. Other parts of her letter, however, are much more interesting, at least to those other than Percy James. Buss described the first-class apartments on the ship as really magnificent, and mentions that unless you had first seen them, you would think the second class were the same. Her letter mentions who she ate with and was sharing her, who people speculate she sat with for company throughout the journey due to them all traveling as second-class passengers. The Titanic could host 833 first-class passengers, 614 second-class passengers, and a staggering 1,006 third-class. The Titanic is often compared to contemporary high-class hotels, embracing the design of such places as the Ritz. This boat of luxury and class didn't end with the hotel inspiration. First-class cabins used the Empire style, with the Renaissance style and Louis XV inspiring first- and second-class public areas and second-class cabins. The seemingly bizarre decor for a boat intended to create the impression of a floating hotel, not an actual ship. Kate Buss, as a second-class passenger, was able to enjoy the lavish decor and comfort of first-class experiences, simply missing out on features such as the saltwater swimming pool, squash court, and common rooms, one of which intended to resemble the Palace of Versailles. There were many other distinctions between first- and second-class passengers, leading many to believe Buss spent her time with those traveling within the same class. This beautiful letter was signed, "Much love, Kate," and like many beautiful stories and artifacts, has been put to auction with the pre-sale estimate of between £20,000 and £25,000. Kate Buss did manage to survive the shipwreck, giving this written romance a happy ending. Buss was saved in lifeboat number 9 and was reportedly the last to leave as she had a fear of heights. This beautiful letter not only lets us glimpse into life as a second-class passenger upon the Titanic, but the story has a heartwarming ending as Kate survived the journey. She passed away on July 12, 1972 at the age of 96. The Titanic survivors arrive home, 1912. Of course, the deaths and the tragic losses are so often discussed with the Titanic, and though any losses are terrible, there were some who survived, making their way home safely only to prompt a wave of public grief. Following the sinking of the ship, the debris lay floating, sinking, drifting in the ocean water, accompanied by an unfair loss of so many lives, as passengers and crew members fighting to stay alive. Of the estimated 2,224 crew and passenger members on board, only 750 made it onto the rescue ship, the RMS Carpathia. At 3:30 a.m., the lights of the Carpathia were first spotted, bringing hope to the passengers who remained. Whilst the ship began bringing people on board at 4 a.m., it took hours to bring each person on board safely. Before bringing people, Carpathia didn't particularly have a smooth journey itself, traveling at a high speed to reach the scene of the Titanic quickly enough, having to weave through the icebergs too, and, of course, traveling through the night. Once the survivors were brought aboard, the Carpathia headed on toward Pier 54 in New York, where it docked in the evening of April 18th. The crew had to negotiate pack ice, fog, thunderstorms, and the choppy seas, all with extremely tentative and unsettled passengers. The welcome home was not the one that families were expecting. Though some were made aware of the Titanic's fatal collapse due to radio messages sent from and between Carpathia and other ships, The vast majority of the public remained blissfully unaware of the tragedy until 3 days after she sank, when so few passengers who had boarded returned home. The time after was filled with anger, grief, and devastation, with petitions and movements to amend maritime safety laws. Reaching an all-time high, the high-running emotions are seen captured in these photographs as people are left with their lives drastically altered. The iceberg that sank the Titanic. The villain of the Titanic story is the iceberg, the hulking mass that sank the unsinkable and wrote itself into the pages of history. At 11:40 p.m. on the 14th of April 1912, the Titanic and the iceberg met. Whilst the iceberg is what sliced the ship open, could there be another reason that it sank? The boat scraped its right-hand side along the iceberg just below the water level. As we all know, what we see of an iceberg above the water is really just the tip. The hulking 90% of it is below surface level, tucked out of sight. 5 watertight compartments, side by side, were ripped open upon impact, creating the fatal damage that tore open the front of the ship. Many have suggested that if just a single or perhaps even 4 of the watertight compartments had been damaged like this, then the Titanic may have managed to survive. Though 5 was simply too much damage to work with. It was at 2:20 a.m., 2 hours and 40 minutes later, that the ship finally slipped below the water. As we mentioned before, when the Carpathia arrived, there were so few lifeboats, all of which were filled and not one person had survived in the water, clocking in at a staggering low 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, the deaths in the Titanic don't lay solely on the iceberg. People have been asking why there were so few lifeboats on board. Why weren't the correct measures in place? Perhaps one of the most often asked questions is why the ship continued approaching the iceberg at the speed it did. The Titanic traveled at a speed of 20.5 knots, approximately 23.6 miles per hour, worsening the damage caused. Furthermore, the crew weren't adequately prepared for an emergency evacuation such as this. The faith in the unsinkable title became far too great. The lack of training and preparation meant that many lifeboats were sent off just half full as officers didn't know how many people could safely fit upon a lifeboat. The iceberg was undeniably the cause for the Titanic's sinking, though a great deal of other factors turned this into one of our history's most tragic events. The photographs of the iceberg failed to do justice to the severity of the collision. Between the hidden 90% below the surface and the failure to prepare for evacuation, that simple iceberg photograph seems far too innocent. The photographs and letters found tell the stories of the lives lost and the lives saved. Each and every person upon the ship has their own story to tell, many of which we will never get to hear. But what do you make of these Titanic photographs? The art of archaeology is a truly fascinating one. The study of ancient civilizations and cultures that came before us is one to respect, for it can reveal so much about us as a species. Much of our history is shrouded in mystery, so it's only natural that we seek to expose the secrets of our ancestors, to find out everything we can about them, what they believed in, their cultures, techniques, and structures. They say the past is a different country. They do things differently there. So today we'll be taking a look at wondrous archaeological discoveries. Shagir Idol older than experts thought. The Shagir Idol, considered by historians and archaeologists as the world's oldest wooden sculpture, is shaped in the form of a human with an eerie-looking face. It is currently on display at the Sverdlovsk Regional Museum of Local Law in Russia. Researchers have now determined that it may date back even further than they originally estimated. The idol was discovered in 1890 in the Ural Mountains of Russia. It is named after the Shagir peatbog in which it was found. In 2018, scientists believed that it had been carved roughly 11,500 years ago. However, those same researchers recently concluded that it had been created 12,100 years prior, a full 600 years earlier than the initial estimate. To understand how old that is, consider when other ancient relics were constructed. Stonehenge dates to around 5,000 years ago, while the Great Pyramids of Giza were over 4,500 years ago. At 12,000 years old, this wooden idol would have existed during the Quaternary extinction, which occurred around 10,000 years ago, and saw the disappearance of Ice Age megafauna and large woolly mammals. This is not some tiny wooden object either. It stands at about 5.3 meters tall and features human faces and geometric patterns. According to researchers at the State Agency of Heritage Service in Germany, this new estimated age makes it the world's earliest wooden monumental sculpture. The research team spent some time reanalyzing the average radiocarbon dates that they had published in 2018. At that time, the age range was from 12,500 to 8,600 years ago, giving them an average of 11,500 years old. However, wax and wood pigment were used on the idol to maintain its condition and repair any damage. They found that wax reconstruction began nearly 120 years ago and the stain in the 1990s. The scientists believed that these treatments would have influenced the results to appear younger as radiocarbon dating calculates the ratio of decaying radioactive carbon isotopes. Instead, the researchers decided to sample the wood's innermost parts from the reconstructed since the treatments did not alter them. With that, they concluded the wood dated to 12,250 years ago. However, they are also aware that the wood came from the heart of a tree, which would have died long before it was cut down and used for construction. Although the organic wood material died 12,250 years ago, they estimate that it was felled roughly 150 years later, linking it to other artifacts with geometric motifs that have been discovered to date about 12,100 years ago as well. We commonly see simple lines and zigzags as decoration during the late Paleolithic and early Mesolithic eras. The sculpture gives us another small insight into what our early ancestors were doing and where they were migrating to. Ancient mummy found entombed in strange cocoon never before seen by archaeologists. A 3,400-year-old mud mummy was recently discovered, the body wrapped in a hardened cocoon of mud resembling a hard shell that baffled the scientists who conducted a scan of the mummy. This deceased body suggests an entirely different way of burial performed by the ancient Egyptians, a precursor to the typical mummification process to which we are all so accustomed. Its finding might alter the way we view the way the ancient Egyptians buried their dead. A pressing theory regarding the mudkikin is that it was used to stabilize the mummy to protect the body from any harm or damage that would handicap it in the afterlife. An alternative suggestion made by scientists was that it was a practice used for ancient aristocrats and the upper classes who would be mummified in resin-based concoctions from 1294 BCE to about 945 BCE, and that this was one of the earlier methods of such intricate burials. However, that leaves the question of why mud was used on this person and not resin, as it ought to have been. A study conducted by Karen Sawada, who is a researcher in the Department of History and Archaeology at Macquarie University in Australia, concluded that mud would have been a significantly cheaper material and far more common and easy to obtain. The mummy itself was dated back to 1207 BCE, however it was shown to have been damaged post-mortem, the body even having been placed into the wrong tomb. The body, found to be female, was put into a coffin with the inscription of Meryuta or Merua, which would have been their name, though researchers claim the body is not that of Meryuta but another unidentified female. This is due to the fact that the mud mummy suffered the same fate as many other mummies of the 19th century. The body was shoved into a coffin that belongs to another person in order for the dealers who sold artifacts and mummies to museums and personal collectors to sell a complete burial set. The body found inside was 200 years older than the coffin, which was identified as being only made in 1000 BCE. Though the body is not Merua's, it's a female who perished in her young adulthood, somewhere between the ages of 20 and 30, most likely at the age of 26. After her passing, she seemed to have been mummified with the usage of the typical textiles used in ancient Egyptian burial rites. It's during this time that researchers assumed that her left knee and leg became damaged by some accident or mistake, though it's probable that the damage was caused by early grave robbers. There is evidence to suggest someone attempted to fix the damage. Several generations down the line, with a rewrapped padding and more application of the mud carapace. The person who attempted to repair the broken parts of the body made a muddy mess of it, with a mixture of mud, sand, and straw built in between the layers of wrapping. The top of the mummy was coated with raw crimson ochre, with multiple layers of linen placed over the damp materials. Unfortunately, their efforts were fruitless as the mummy was damaged once again later down the line. Though in a different spot, the neck and head were consequently injured because this injury cut through all the layers, including the muddy carapace and various linen layers. It is evident that this was recent damage done likely within only the last few centuries. Notably, this is not the only Egyptian mummy which was repaired after death. The body of Pharaoh Seti I was rewrapped multiple times, as well as the body of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, so this was a semi-common practice, so it is assumed. Despite this, it was still not a popular practice opposed to the more usual ways of mummification, it seems, and the discovery of this body shows us that the burial process was significantly more nuanced than we believed and that the ancient Egyptians had multiple and various ways of burial. On time period, area, and social status. Lost Renaissance masterpiece discovered hanging above woman's hot plate cells for $26.8 million. Sometimes things that are lost are hiding in the most unlikely of places, and occasionally they are even hiding in plain sight. This was the case with the recently discovered Renaissance artwork that had been considered lost to history. Philomene Wolff, a Parisian auctioneer, was tasked with evaluating the contents of a 90-year-old in Compiègne and was immediately drawn to a small, old-looking piece of artwork that was hanging over her hot plate in the kitchen. She immediately knew that the painting, which is about 10 inches by 8 inches, was something special and suspected that it was a work of Italian Primovatism, but had no idea exactly how valuable it would turn out to be. Wolff took the painting to Eric Turkin, an art historian with a track record of identifying difficult or long-lost works. After a thorough analysis, Turquine and a team of experts were all able to certify without a doubt that the artist of the painting was Seni de Pipo, also known as Cimabue, who is one of the highly celebrated fathers of early Renaissance painting dating back to the 13th century. Cimabue's paintings are incredibly rare. Despite being considered a master of medieval painting, and historians only know of 11 of his paintings that currently exist, making this find even more impressive. Art historians were able to identify the painting as Christ Mocked, a part of a diptych of 8 scenes depicting the Passion and Crucifixion of Christ, likely as part of an altar scene that was separated and sold in the 18th century. Although prior to the discovery of Christ Mocked, there were only 2 known panels from the diptych in existence, called the Virgin and Child with 2 angels and the Flagellation of Christ. This new discovery was able to be identified as a member of the set by looking at the wood grain that was consistent throughout all 3 pieces. Jerome Moncucul, a part of the team that made the exciting identification, said that they were able to positively determine that the painting was not a clever copy by comparing the wood grain between the sets. They are all made with the same technique on the same wood panel, so you can follow the grain of the wood through the different scenes, he reported. He also used infrared light to be sure the painting was done by the same hand. You can even see the corrections he made. Although there are only 11 known works by Cimabue in existence, historians speculate that the altarpiece that Christ mocked was originally a part of contained 8 panels, meaning that there could be 5 additional panel pieces left for discovery. The owner of the apartment where the painting was unknowingly hidden away was elderly and moving out of her apartment. She had no idea that she had an incredibly rare and valuable artwork in her kitchen. She told reporters that she had thought it was a Greek icon painting and that it had been in her family for as long as she could remember. Despite having been hung over a hot plate used to cook food for all those years, experts reported that the painting is still in excellent condition, apart from minor accumulation of dust. Considering the fact that the painting was made around it is truly impressive that it was able to remain in such good condition for all this time, and reminds us that you never know what might be lying in wait in some nondescript place for the right person to come along. Archaeologists find intact ceremonial chariot near Pompeii. Of all ancient cities we know of, the elusive Pompeii is surely the most famous of all for the sorrowful, sudden fate which befell it and its many citizens when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, coating the entire population in burning soot, encasing all its people, buildings, animals, and objects in everlasting existence. Officials at the site of Pompeii revealed their discovery of a never-before-found ceremonial chariot, a breathtaking discovery, joining the surplus of wonderful findings made at and around the archaeological site. The chariot itself was made with elements of iron, but its decorations were made of bronze and mineralized wooden pieces, and was found in the northern settlement of Pompeii amongst the other ruins. It sat in the ruins of a stable where the dead remains of a trio of horses were found. It was parked, likely ready for its owner to take it home, something which never came to be, for the volcano immortalized the moment in time forever. Unlike the majority of other findings, this chariot was pristinely preserved, almost entirely in one piece. Having survived the initial eruption, the eventual caving in of the stables and centuries' worth of antiquity thieves, was found sitting perfectly beside one of the ancient villas surrounding Mount Vesuvius, overlooking the stunning view of the Mediterranean Sea at the edge of the city. Last year, archaeologists found the skeletons of what they believe to have been a wealthy man and his male slave nearby the villa, seemingly trying to escape the devastation unsuccessfully. Archaeologists believe that this particular chariot was used for festivals and parades, even potentially meant as a carriage for newlywed wives to carry them to their new husbands' homes. Chariots were used as casual transport to carry products and merchant goods as well as produce, but the intricate decorations suggest this was a chariot used only for special occasions and used only several times a year instead of being an everyday chariot. As for the villa on which it was found, the Italian police discovered it back in 2017, after busting an illegally dug tunnel in the area. 2 people living nearby were put on trial for illegally digging about 80 meters worth of tunnel in the Pompeii area without a permit. Archaeologists find intact ceremonial chariot near Pompeii. Of all ancient cities we know of, the elusive Pompeii is surely the most famous of all for the sorrowful sudden fate which befell it and its many citizens when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, coating the entire population in burning soot, encasing all its people, buildings, animals, and objects in everlasting existence. Officials at the site of Pompeii revealed their discovery of a never-before-found ceremonial chariot, a breathtaking discovery, joining the surplus of wonderful findings made at and around the archaeological site. The chariot itself was made with elements of iron, but its decorations were made of bronze and mineralized wooden pieces and was found in the northern settlement of Pompeii amongst the other ruins. It sat in the ruins of a stable where the dead remains of a trio of horses were found. It was parked, likely ready for its owner to take it home, something which never came to be, for the volcano immortalized the moment in time forever. Unlike the majority of other findings, this chariot was pristinely preserved, almost entirely in one piece. Having survived the initial eruption, the eventual caving in of the stables and centuries' worth of antiquity thieves, was found sitting perfectly beside one of the ancient villas surrounding Mount Vesuvius, overlooking the stunning view of the Mediterranean Sea at the edge of the city. Last year, archaeologists found the skeletons of what they believe to have been a wealthy man and his male slave nearby the villa, seemingly trying to escape the devastation unsuccessfully. Archaeologists believe that this particular chariot was used for festivals and parades, even potentially meant as a carriage for newlywed wives to carry them to their new husbands' homes. Chariots were used as casual transport to carry products and merchant goods as well as produce, but the intricate decorations suggest this was a chariot used only for special occasions and used only several times a year instead of being an everyday chariot. As for the villa on which it was found, the Italian police discovered it back in 2017, after busting an illegally dug tunnel in the area. 2 people living nearby were put on trial for illegally digging about 80 meters worth of tunnel in the Pompeii area without a permit. Archaeology allows us a colorful, bright insight into the past. It lets us see how our ancestors lived and what everyday life was like for them. Ancient civilizations which are now long gone, thought of life, death, wealth, and status which have since disappeared live on in our memories. And with these constant discoveries, after the dawning of the space race, humanity continued very little projects into that of space exploration, and instead used the majority of funds for continued space research. Due to this new initiative, it became imperative for space agencies to establish permanent space stations in space, to help with continued research projects. This led to the creation of the International Space Station, which can be used by all nations and governments in a joint effort to further research in all areas. Of course, attempting to understand a brave new frontier comes with a variety of strange and mysterious circumstances that researchers are still trying to better understand. One of these is the continued reports of strange objects that have been detected by various space cameras attached to the International Space Station. In fact, just recently an interesting object was captured during a spacewalk. Someone was watching the live feed and noticed that something came into view just below the astronauts, saying that it looked quite large and just appeared to hover. This isn't the first time that a strange-looking object has approached the International Space Station. And there's some that have said that mysterious objects are interested in the ISS, and that if you're patient enough you can see mysterious lights approach the station as if they're inspecting it. Some online users, though, said they were surprised that the light didn't get cut off, saying that when strange objects sometimes appear close to the International Space Station, the live camera cuts out, stopping the general public from being able to observe the objects any further. This object in particular, though, is an interesting one, because although amateur researchers have said that very strange objects can be seen around the ISS in a shorter amount of time, this is one of those times where the object can actually be seen quite clearly. One person said the following about the object: "I'm not sure what this is, but it does look strange. I've seen the video and it suddenly appears in view. I'm not sure if this is something mysterious or just a piece of debris, but it's an interesting capture." Skeptics have suggested the object in question doesn't have anything to do with mysterious crafts, but is rather a panel that was taken off by the astronauts during the mission. Countless pieces of space debris are flying around our planet at any given time. And although NASA don't like it when astronauts drop things, as they can come back to haunt them in the future, it's inevitable that it's going to happen. Although this particular event may be something like a piece of space debris, amateur researchers are certain that some of these objects that approach the International Space Station don't fit into that category, saying that they've observed large objects that make sudden changes in direction, and that they go against the rest of the objects that can be seen traveling around them. For years now, NASA's stance on these objects has stayed the same, but in some cases they refuse to comment on some of the footage that the ISS cameras managed to capture. For those that are unaware, the International Space Station has a variety of cameras to monitor spacewalks and other areas that need to be under 24-hour surveillance. It's during this surveillance, though, that eagle-eyed viewers have managed to spot strange things in the background, saying that these objects defy everything around them and appear to have the ability to travel at tens of thousands of miles per hour. It's important to note that NASA officials have said they've never captured anything of interest close to the International Space Station, and that all of these reports can be easily explained as things like space debris and camera anomalies. Interestingly, though, it seems that this attitude at NASA may be changing. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson has said that he wants the company to be more open about this topic, and has said that NASA is being briefed about the topic of mysterious aircrafts. He said the following in regards to the increased reports of these mysterious flying aircrafts: "Now that I'm here at NASA, I've turned to our scientists and I've said, would you look at it from a scientific standpoint? See if you can determine what these objects are so that we can have a better idea. The bottom line is we want to know, and that's what we're trying to do." These comments have led some to think that NASA may be changing their attitude towards these sightings, and that they may be looking into these International Space Station anomalies with a more open mind. However, some were quickly disappointed when the space agency posted an update on their website. Interestingly, in July of 2021, NASA updated their websites and posted about the unidentified aerial phenomena. They said the following: "One of NASA's key goals is the search for life in the universe. To date, NASA has yet to find any credible evidence of extraterrestrial life. However, NASA has long been exploring the solar system and beyond to help us answer fundamental questions, including whether we're alone in the universe. The agency's astrobiology program focuses on the origins, evolution, and distribution of life beyond Earth, studying water on Mars, probing promising ocean worlds such as Titan and Europa, to looking for both signatures in the atmospheres of our cosmic neighborhood." End quote. As of right now, NASA continues to deny these photographs, saying that although they look interesting, they don't show anything that points towards them being under intelligent control, and says that the general public should listen to what they say. Further noting that they've never found anything of interest in any of their NASA recordings. One NASA worker said the following about these images. All of these can easily be explained as spaceflower camera anomalies. There's no need to research them any further. End quote. So what do you make of these types of events? And do you think that the International Space Station has ever captured anything of interest?